Welcome back to the Truth Factory. Sorry I didn't make a video sooner. I was doing research into Elzagate, and I think I may have become an MKUltra sleeper agent in the process. Let's talk about Alphabet. No, not that one. The parent company of Google, which is the parent company of YouTube. As this might explain a little bit more of their bias and what is happening on YouTube, besides the fact that this person owns shares in the company. A Google employee was just fired for writing a memo about diversity in the company, and he states some very logical points that are hard to dispute, but instead of looking at these points and saying, well, maybe you're right, they reprimand the employee, they fire him, and they call his opinions nefarious, because you see it goes against Google's social justice narrative that is bleeding through all of Silicon Valley right now. The memo was 10 pages long, but some of the key points the writer made were that Google's political bias has caused internal shaming of employees' opinions, which has led to silence, and this silence has created an ideological echo chamber where some people are too scared to express their opinions and have that be honestly discussed. This lack of discussion fosters the most extreme and authoritarian elements of this ideology, and obviously that part is true because they fired this employee for expressing opinions that were alternative to this bias. In this memo, he talks about differences in distributions of traits between men and women may in part explain why they don't have a 50% representation of women in tech and leadership. Discrimination to reach equal representation is unfair, divisive, and bad for business. And I can't stress this point enough. If Google is sitting around the boardroom really thinking, why aren't there more women here? It's just because women typically are not interested in tech. So when they say that they're going to hire 50% women, you're pulling from a much smaller pool of women than you are men, which means you are not necessarily hiring those with the best grades or talent. You are hiring them just because they are women in tech. And I say this as a woman who works in medical technology. I work with lasers, and I got honors in school, and I worked my butt off. And I would never want to be given a job just for being a woman. I would want to know that I was the best at it and that I earned it, and anything else would be completely insulting to me. This person then goes on to talk about the biological differences between men and women, saying universally across all human cultures, men and women are different. And he talks about ways to pair programming with more collaboration and social aspects to get women more involved in tech, which is a good idea if that's what you're going for. And he's not saying this with a caveman misogynistic mentality. He's right. Far left likes to say that gender is just a social construct and a product of environment. Yet they hold up the argument that transgenders were born in the wrong body. So is gender really a social construct, or are you born into a gender due to hormones in the womb? It's a bit confusing and contradictory. Because if you were not hired at Google as a programmer, as a man, you can just go get your ID changed to say that you are now a woman. Lauren Southern changed genders legally and it took about an hour. That's how easy it is. And now they'd be more likely to hire you if you claim that you were transgender because they have a smaller pool of female engineers to hire from, and they wouldn't discriminate you if you told them that you were transgender because they would say, great, more diversity. Basically, it's great if women naturally are interested in tech if you are as good as everyone else. But to try to incentivize something to one gender and not the other is actually in itself discrimination to that other gender, who can't help that they were born with a dick between their legs. Could you imagine going into an interview where they look at your resume and they say, oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Oh, you're a white man. We have a lot of those. Could you maybe be less white and cut your dick off? That's crazy. He goes on to talk about how feminism has made great strides in freeing women from traditional gender roles, but that men are very much still tied to male gender roles, and questions why men aren't given the same encouragement and incentives to pursue more female-dominated jobs, which is a very good point. Engineering classes have about as many women in them as there are men in nursing classes, but why are there tons of scholarships for women to get into STEM and very little for men to get into nursing, early education, and social work? From my experience, male nurses do extremely well because of their biological differences to women. They're typically typically physically stronger, and nursing is a very physical job. And that is just true. Otherwise, Olympic standards would be the same across genders, and they're not for a reason. So why is there not more encouragement for men to get into those jobs? The memo's author goes on to write, discriminating just to increase representation of women in tech is as misguided and biased as mandating increases for women's representation in the homeless, work-related and violent deaths, prisons, and school dropouts. Because feminism has been great for women, but people tend to forget and trivialize the statistics that are very real that involve men. But apparently saying all of that is nefarious, and he got fired. So that just goes to show the culture that is going on right now in Silicon Valley, and it has sparked a huge debate. In my opinion, affirmative action is not only discriminatory, it's insulting to everyone. And it starts on college campuses, where it actually discriminates more minorities than anyone. It's been coined the bamboo ceiling, which is also a racist name. And it typically affects Asian students who work super hard to get the best grades. And then they have to compete against other Asians who would otherwise make up 98% of engineering and medical classes, and they should. Hey, when I'm dying on a table, do I care what race or gender my surgeon is, or do I care that they were chosen because they are the best at saving lives? That's just logic. Something that Google clearly isn't ready for. I'm going to try to put out another video soon. Thank you all to everyone supporting me on Patreon. I'll link to that and my Twitter in the description. Have a great night, guys.